The central agency says, so a consultant wrote this report? Yes. And who commissioned the consultant report? The agency that wants the money? It belongs in the bin. That's exactly where it belongs, because consultants twist reports, twist things to get the result that their clients want. That's the service. It's PR dressed up as analysis.
Derek here from Civic Punks, and I'm here with Nicholas. Nicholas, tell me more about yourself.
My name is Nicholas Gruen. I practice as an economist. We founded a company called Lateral Economics. I've had a long association really on the fringes of government, first as a staffer, now as someone who writes reports that can influence governments, and also as chairman of the Australian Centre for Social Innovation, where I worked fairly intensively, or where the centre worked pretty intensively on some pretty heavy-duty reimaginings of the way governments could work.
Well, and I think that's a good place to start, because we've had a fairly long, far-reaching conversation, and one piece that I was curious about was your most recent Substack was quite critical of this whole idea of innovation.
Yeah, well, it was quite critical of what's happening. And what I said was that, in fact, when I got to TAXI, the Australian Centre for Social Innovation, they were in the middle of doing human-centred design on a program called Family by Family. And Family by Family, to me, just seemed to be clearly this was the right way to go. And the way I put it is that it is professional knowledge as midwife, not as obstetrician. So it was targeted at families that might identify themselves as at risk of falling into crisis. If a family falls into crisis with young kids, you may have to take the kids off the family, and that's disastrous. So the idea was, can we support families through periods when they might fall into crisis? Can we prevent that? The program that emerged from months of co-design with the families was a program in which one family would mentor another, two local families, one would mentor the other. The one that was doing the mentoring would ideally have been through difficult times itself. It was paid an honorarium, so it was paid some money for this, and the whole thing was coached by a trained family coach, not necessarily someone trained in social work, but someone who had been through a training program to help train this program. That's what I mean by professional as midwife, not an obstetrician. They're trying to help natural processes take their course. They're trying to help people learn about their lives and face their difficulties and get through them, come up with ways through those problems. And what my Substack said was that someone so the Centre for Social Innovation has recently released a cost-benefit analysis of Family by Family. And it was been saying, hey, this thing works. And my contribution on my blog was to say, hang on a minute, Family by Family either works or it doesn't work. It's been around for 15 years. We keep hearing from government that they want to know what works so they can scale what works. This has been there for 15 years. It should either be a big growing program or it should be shut down because it didn't work and couldn't be made to work. Neither is the case. What is happening is that a very promising program bumps along at subsistence, like lots of other programs, some of which work and some of which don't. And this system tells itself the story that in some kind of way it's looking for what works, it's testing out what works, and it's expanding what works, and that is simply, as a matter of empirical fact, not the case. And that's something I've been pointing out for at least 15 years, and everyone says, yes, please come and talk to our senior executives. This is terrific. It makes us all feel so innovative to hear what you say, and then they get back to their intro. This is how the whole system works. It's really a terrible, terrible state of affairs, and its roots go quite deep, and that's what we've spent maybe 2 hours at lunch trying to unpick, and it's a difficult thing to do.
So in some ways it's almost like the innovation which is meant to disrupt the system has become part of the system itself.
Well, yes, but it's more shocking than that, because as I published an article about 5 or more years ago, and I called it the Catch-22 of innovation. And what I said was, this system tells itself that it is looking for things that work. And here's what happens if you go to government and you say, here we have something that works, and if you spend money on it now, in 4 or 5 years' time, it will be repaying you in terms of lower dole payments, lower prison expenses, expenses and so on. Look at the data, satisfy yourselves and help us grow this program. What happens is the government doesn't really, it looks a bit embarrassed by the government. This is a bureaucrat, maybe the Department of Social Security. It's not built to scale programs. It's not built to do any of this stuff. So what it says is, well, we don't know that you're telling us the truth. Everybody comes and tells us this. Why don't you go and get an independent review? And so off you go and you spend $200,000 or $300,000 on Deloitte, or this is a brief product placement, $150,000 with Lateral Economics, my company, and you come back to government with a report and you say, here's the independent report. And then the Department of Social Security looks a bit embarrassed because they were just stalling for time. They didn't really mean any of this. But it goes up the line, and when it gets to a central agency that is actually serious about choosing between this and that, the central agency says, so a consultant wrote this report? Yes. And who commissioned the consultant report? The agency that wants the money? It belongs in the bin. That's exactly where it belongs, because consultants twist reports, twist things to get the result that their clients want. That's the service. It's PR dressed up as analysis. This is a catch-22. And it's not as if we took that away, the whole thing would suddenly spring into action. What I'm saying is this is just one of the many signs you can find if you're serious that this is not actually a serious system. It's a nice thing to say. Lots of people have it in their mind, so these are well-meaning people who say this sort of stuff, but it is not a functioning system. And if we want to have such a system, we have to build it. And we've not even applied ourselves to it, even though we've spent 30 years talking like this.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Nicholas, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.